I remember in about 1992, there was a musical called Hunting of the Snark. And the beaver in that musical led a huge song called Dancing Towards Disaster. With every movement that we make, we could be dancing towards disaster. And I feel that that is really where we are going now. And the question is, how and under whom? So the obvious candidates for disaster, for causing disaster, are President Putin, or rather the doppelgangers in the Kremlin, uh, Mr. Netanyahu in Israel, President Xi possibly. But there is one much larger and orange candidate who looms, and I'm relying heavily on a TikTok piece by Richard Murphy, which I thought was extraordinarily potent. The confluence of recent legal and political events surrounding Donald Trump paints a grim picture, not just of a former president who's got back into the White House and rebelling against the institutional constraints that tried to stop him, but of a man rapidly transforming the United States into an elective autocracy. And there are legal nodes, there are political signals that seem to be causing alarm. And the first is James Boseberg, Judge James Boseberg, the chief judge of the D.C. District Court, and he's reportedly held Donald Trump in contempt of court for violating a federal order by sending asylum seekers to El Salvador, directly contravening legal protections for refugees and asylum seekers. There's also the case of the Turkish student who was suddenly stripped of her visa. The El Salvador order was not only ignored, but Trump's team allegedly did so without securing congressional or judicial approval, raising questions about the executive's adherence to the separation of powers. Boseberg, an Obama appointee known for his moderate judicial temperament, rarely issues contempt rulings unless provocation is extreme. His move therefore signals judicial alarm at Trump's repeated sidestepping of federal authority. Much like Andrew Jackson's infamous remark, John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. California, the Californian governor, Gavin Newsom, and his attorney general have initiated proceedings, meanwhile challenging the legality of Trump's unilateral tariff impositions, particularly those affecting California's tech and agricultural sectors. And under the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 and the Constitution's commercial clause, tariff powers are supposed to lie with Congress, not with the president acting alone. Newsom's legal team argues that Trump bypassed congressional approval, once again setting a precedent for executive overreach, and this time with the economic consequences that ripple far beyond the US border. They're seeking injunctions and a constitutional review, framing this as a matter of federalism and the abuse of the presidency for vendetta-laced trade policies. The most ominous development is something that Richard Murphy pointed out, that Trump gave a directive to his advisors, to J.D. Vance and Andrew Hegseth, to review the Insurrection Act of 1807, a statute allowing the president to deploy military forces on US soil to suppress civic order, rebellion, or insurrection. And while lawful in theory, it's used to preemptively suppress political dissent or forestall a lawful transfer of power should Trump lose again or be threatened in some way, would amount to a coup in all but name. Legal scholars such as Richard Murphy have argued that this points to an impending auto-coup strategy where Trump, under the pretext of national security or border emergency, suspends normal democratic government. This isn't speculation. In his last term, Trump threatened martial law, contemplating seizing voting machines, and is now surrounding himself with loyalists who support the use of state coercion to suppress opposition. Remember the uprising in Washington when he lost the last election. His platform of 2025, the 2025 thing, includes plans to purge the federal civil service, militarize immigration enforcement, and weaponize the Department of Justice. To say that Trump is worse than Putin or President Xi may sound hyperbolic, but there's a chilling logic to the claim. Russia, despite its aggression, is largely viewed as a declining imperial power. Its authoritarianism is centralized, brutal, and expected. China is a surveillance autocracy with imperial ambitions, but it operates through a collective party-state logic. The US under Trump, by contrast, masquerades as a democracy, and this is what makes it uniquely dangerous. The constitutional architecture is being hollowed out from within by legal maneuvers cloaked in patriotic rhetoric. The illusion of legality, contempt charges here, selective enforcement there, creates what political theorist Sheldon Wolin once described as inverted totalitarianism, where democracy persists in form but is nullified in function. What we're witnessing is not the usual political theatre of American partisanship, but a shift towards constitutional nihilism. Trump's contempt for judicial authority, as he demonstrated before he became president, in the various cases that he was forced to attend, his executive overreach on trade and his flirtation with martial law are not separate episodes. They form a universal strategy for power consolidation, and his treatment of other elected officials, like, for example, President Zelensky, is worrying. As of today, I think the most dangerous threat to global order is not Xi's military drills or Putin's gas diplomacy and belligerence, or Netanyahu's aggression and, again, overreach. It's the potential for a nuclear superpower to collapse inward into authoritarianism, directed by a man with a messianic belief in his own necessity and no regard for legal limits. The next few months may determine whether the world's most powerful modern democracy survives as a democracy at all.